All right, welcome back to the channel, everybody. I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon and The Blackest Heart and the upcoming Lonesome Crown, all three published by Simon & Schuster Saga Press. Today, I'm going to do my best to attempt to review Consider Phlebas by Iain M. Banks. It's either Consider Phlebas or Consider Phlebas? I don't know. That's part of the problem, folks. I thought reviewing Gene Wolfe's Book of the New Sun was difficult. Iain Banks takes book reviewing difficulty to a whole new level. You probably saw on my latest book haul, I bought the entire Culture series by Iain M. Banks, 10 books. Got them stacked right here behind me, a couple of them over there. This is book one in the Culture series. Came out in 1987. Let's take a look at the cover. We kind of reviewed the covers of these in my book haul, but I think that Orbit Books does a great job of keeping these covers classy. They make them look like big science fiction titles. Like even that one, Use of Weapons, has got a great title. I mean, and they all look spectacular together on the shelf. You can't go wrong. I give the covers from Orbit Books an A+, just because they do the job and they look snazzy on the bookshelf. Okay, this came out in 1987, right? I remember reading this about 20 years ago and kind of being like, okay, that's all right. That was a little difficult, but it was decent for what it was. I mean, I really had to pay attention, and you do. Folks, you got to pay attention to this. Like Gene Wolfe's Book of the New Sun, or Stephen Erickson's Malazan Book of the Fallen, or anything by Peter F. Hamilton and Alastair Reynolds on the science fiction. Iain M. Banks is a dense writer. His prose is wonderful, and what he is saying is dripping with allegory and theme, and you gotta pay attention. You've got to pay attention. The closest I can come to sort of describing who he writes like is he's sort of a cross between two others, because he's a British writer. There's two other British writers that I really compare him to as almost like Alastair Reynolds and Peter F. Hamilton. If Alastair and Reynolds and Peter F. Hamilton were to write a story in the style of Gene Wolfe, we would end up with Iain M. Banks. Man, that's a circular way to go about it. But I'm telling you, folks, these books are not for the light reader. If you're just thinking you're going to go into this reading a Star Wars Legends book, like something like this, you can breeze through Kenobi and get the gist of the story. You cannot breeze through this and get the gist of anything. So what's it about? As the war raged across the galaxy, billions had died. Billions more were doomed. Moons, planets, the very stars themselves faced destruction. Cold-blooded, brutal, and worse, random. That's what, these books, or at least book one, and I'm imagining the other 9, are talking about the destruction of not just cities, but planets and stars and star systems. Randomly, the Iderians fought for their faith, the culture for its moral right to exist. Principles were at stake. There was no surrender. So now the Iderians fight for their faith, and it's kind of like they are a very physical war is what they're after. They are the ones that want to destroy things. The people that don't believe the way they believe, they want to basically make the universe a shit show for those people. Now the culture is the other side of the coin, and they are more of like, we would rather be peaceful. We would rather you have a debate and have you see our side of the story rather than just go kill. But however, that doesn't mean that they're not gonna put on their boxing gloves if they have to. So within this cosmic conflict, an individual saying, deep within a fabled labyrinth of a barren world, the planet of the dead, there is a thing called the mind. So what happens is in the prologue, the very prologue, we get this junk ship, sort of this junk starship, and it's got this thing in the called the mind in it, and these guys, they shoot it out because they want to protect it, and it goes and it lands on a so-called like barren world. But what we find out is the world's not barren. This mind that has all of this information in it that the universe can use, it didn't just land on a barren planet. It landed on a planet called the planet of the dead. And that's the prologue. And then we jump to a bunch of mercenaries that have to go find this thing, all right? And we start with a guy named Horza, with one of the greatest opening scenes in a book you'll ever see. Horza is in prison. Not just any prison. It's like the universe's worst prison ever. He is in a prison that's stone, and it's a sewage pit, and the sewage rises up and up and up, and he has to keep his head above the sewage because, and why is the sewage? Well, it's his time. It's his death sentence, folks. And how is he going to be killed? Well, the people above that are creating the sewage, they're holding a banquet in his honor. So think about that. You are sentenced to death, and the way you die is by the people that want you killed hold a banquet in your honor, and they piss and shit and vomit into the sewers, and that's what fills up your cell and kills you. It's freaking delightful. I mean, I work at the Utah State Prison. We don't have anything like that at our Utah State Prison. Thank God. Thank God we're more humane. Anyway, I was just going to end the review with that, because that's, I mean, Jesus. I mean, what more can you want from a book? Anyway, our guy Horza, he ends up escaping from the prison. He joins a band of mercenaries. They go off on an adventure. There's an array, in this book, there's an array of alien creatures and cultures. I mean, this thing is dripping with alien species, different planets, different ideas that are just big and jump off the page at you. I mean, there's laser knife. They call it the laser missile knife. But it's the exact thing. If you watch Guardians of the Galaxy, the guy that plays Mary Poppins, I don't think that's the character he plays. I think he references Mary Poppins when he's floating down with the, but he's got that little red needle thing that zips around and kills people. I'm pretty sure that the Guardians of the Galaxy got that from Consider Phlebas, because there's a weapon like that called the laser knife missile, and it zips around and kills people. Pretty badass, right? And there's a lot more stuff like that in this book, the religious philosophies, the discussions that they have, the differences in cultures and ideas, and how things should work in this universe are discussed at length by all the characters. And these mercenaries that Horza goes around with, they're just great, and they go to different places, and we get to see all sorts of different parts of this universe. I consider this, just world building alone, on par with Dune. Now, I don't think the characters are as memorable as those that are in Dune, but maybe that's just because I've read Dune like 10 times, and so it's just like they're memorable. And maybe if I read this 10 times, then things would equal out. But definitely world building. If you like thick, dense, serious world building on a universal level with galaxies, spanning galaxies and planets and cultures and religions and different political ideologies and all sorts of really kind of cool things going on with robots and AI and just badass mercenaries and all of the above, and aliens, creatures and aliens. It's got it all. It's got it all. So this is a really dynamite. But you have to pay attention, folks. Make no mistake, you can't look away from one word of this book, because you gotta pay attention. I give this a 9 out of 10, which is a really, really great rating. I guess the only reason it's not a 9.5 or a 10 for me is, again, the characters, though they were super, super cool, I just found I was trying to, because I started comparing this to Dune from the get-go. And so maybe that's the problem I've got, is I was like, okay, Dune is my favorite. Man, this thing is coming close. This thing is coming close. I will give it a 9.5.